So there is a body count, a Bitcoin treasury company body count, and it is growing. I want you to picture something. You wake up, you got a beautiful idea. You're gonna start a company, raise a pile of other people's money, buy Bitcoin with it, slap a ticker on it, and ride off into the orange sunset. Genius. Bulletproof. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong, and it did for some people. Jack Mallers is out, Satsuma's being liquidated, Adam Back's BSTR SPAC terminated, Nakamoto Incorporated just closed their healthcare clinics because providing goods and services and generating cash flow is a horrible business model. That's why. Duh. And I know what you're thinking right now. Rustin, this is bad. This is bearish. Should I panic? Should I sell? Put down the bottle. Let me walk you off the ledge, my friend, because here's what nobody on financial Twitter is telling you. The massacre is the bull case. Dead serious, big show today. We got bodies to count. And more importantly, we got a thesis. Here's what you're going to understand by the end of this video. 1. Why these treasury companies were always going to fail, and it had nothing to do with Bitcoin or who the PR face sticker was. 2. Why Parker Lewis has been right about this for years and why the market is finally catching up to him. And 3. Why, while all this paper Bitcoin is burning, the real thing, actual Bitcoin, spot Bitcoin, your keys, your coin is winning. Quietly, relentlessly, as it always has. Welcome back. I'm Rustin. We got a big show today.
I've heard that rhetoric a lot of without the ETFs and without treasury companies, Bitcoin wouldn't be shit. That is so offensive, and it couldn't be further from the truth. No one entity, no one Wall Street vehicle makes Bitcoin what it is. It is a collective movement, period. ETFs have dumped 120,000 Bitcoins on our head in the last 2 months, and treasury companies are not eating all of that supply. In fact, recently they've become sellers. And guess what? Bitcoin bounced off 58K. So who the bought that? Come on. Don't let anybody else tell you that you don't matter. We're the only thing that matters. Us, the people, are the only thing that matters in this asset class. Satoshi found a way to distribute all the Bitcoins, all the sats, to all of us before the rest of the world figured it out. The supply's gone. There's only 1 million Bitcoin left to be mined. It's gone. It's already in the hands of the people. So sellers get exhausted when all the Bitcoins are concentrated in the hands of people like you and I that have jobs, that produce cash flow, that earn more than they spend, don't take on too much leverage, and hold the fucking line. I'm not selling anything right now. I'm a buyer.
Let's start at the top. July 20th, 2026, Jack Mallers, the man who stood on stage in El Salvador and made grown Bitcoiners openly weep. That was one of them. The guy who built Strike basically from nothing in his bedroom that's empty. Jack Mallers stepped down as CEO of 21 Capital. This resignation of sorts is effective immediately to focus full-time on Strike, his payments company. The thing he's actually, and I say this with all due respect, totally brilliant at. Jack stepping away from the suit corners is a sign of people returning to first principles in a way. And that's a beautiful thing. Let's go ahead and see what Jack had to say about stepping down himself.
Hey everyone. I have decided to step down as the CEO of 21 Capital. I wanted to tell you that myself in my own words because you deserve to hear it from me directly. When I helped start 21, I thought we had an opportunity to build something very specific. Not only a company built on Bitcoin, not only a company built with Bitcoin on its balance sheet, but also a company with Bitcoin businesses producing cash flow built alongside of it. That was the vision that I believed in. That is still the vision that I believe in. However, over time, it became clear that the board and I did not agree on the path toward building for that vision. Not in bad faith, not because anyone was wrong. The people involved in 21 are immensely talented and committed to what they believe. But sometimes people can look at the same opportunity and arrive at different conclusions as to how to build it. And that's okay. But something had to change. And ultimately, I made the decision to step down as the CEO and exit myself from the business. Now, I do not say that lightly. People believed in 21. People invested in 21. People believed in me specifically as its CEO. I understand that responsibility. I feel the weight of that responsibility. I know some people will be disappointed by this outcome. This was certainly not the vision that I had when I started the business as to how this story would end. Now, with all of that being said, and as hard as walking away from 21 has been, I know that it is both the honest and the right thing to do. It's the right thing for 21, the company. It's the right thing for its shareholders. It's the right thing for Bitcoiners, and it's the right thing for me. This experience in making this decision has brought me back to questions that matter the most. Like, why has Bitcoin been my life's mission for the last 14 years? What do I want to build? Who am I building for? And maybe the simplest but most important thing that I learned through all of this is that I'm at my best and my heart is most full and I'm able to contribute to the Bitcoin story most fully when I pour my energy and my blood, my sweat, my tears into building tools for Bitcoin and Bitcoiners, period. That simple. I want to be building for the person stacking sats, for the small to medium-sized business that's starting their own Bitcoin treasury, for the hodler, for those of you at conferences that run up to me and say, Jack, it was a podcast you recorded, or it was Strike that finally got myself or my family or my friends to understand Bitcoin, to get off zero. The person that's worked their whole life to accumulate savings and now wants those savings to be protected in Bitcoin. Those are the people that I want to spend my life building for. And to me, that's what Strike is. Bitcoin has a weird way of forcing clarity on you. It tests what you really believe. It challenges who you really are, where you may be weak. And it makes you confront what actually matters, especially when the answer can no longer be theoretical. And this experience has done that for me. I have never believed in Bitcoin more than I do today. I have never been more energized to build for Bitcoiners more than I am right now. I know the type of leader that I am and that I want to be. I know the type of business that Strike is and that I want to build. And I know the type of world that I think is worth building for. My life's work remains Bitcoin. The home and where I do that work remains Strike. I know what I'm building, and I know who I'm building it for. And I know why it matters. So thank you for your support this far. This story is far from over. In fact, in many ways, it's just getting started. So with that, I wish 21 and the team nothing but the best. And I am back to work, working on Bitcoin for Bitcoiners at Strike. Take care.
Now, to be fair and balanced, the new CEO of 21 claims to be taking the company in a new direction and throwing the treasury company that we know of, its entire model, in the garbage. Let's see what Rafa Zaguri has to say.
So from my understanding, Hoffa, I wouldn't even, with your vision for 21, it doesn't even sound, I wouldn't even call it a Bitcoin treasury company. Well, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I think it's a Bitcoin operating company is probably a better way to describe it. I mean, we still say we're a Bitcoin treasury company because that's the category that the market gave to us, right? But I think with time, and I don't care if we're called a Bitcoin treasury companies. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. I think the model is what's going to prove, that there is a different model at the end of the day. But the core focus is much more. I'll give you one example of why I think it's wrong to think about only in treasury terms. Imagine you have a completely hypothetical example, but just to prove a point. Imagine you have 100 Bitcoins in your treasury, right? And I come to you and say, Nico, I have a company that you can invest in this company. It's going to cost you 50 Bitcoins to invest in this company, right? And this company, for whatever reason, has a proven track record for the last 5 years that is paying you 20 Bitcoins a month. You take that deal all day long. You say, okay, absolutely. I'm going to give you my Bitcoins or exchange your Bitcoin to shares of a company that can now produce more cash flow that at the end of the day is going to add, as I mentioned in my presentation, to your shareholder value at the end of the day. So your treasury may go down because you're switching some of your Bitcoins to a company that can perform better, but your overall chance of actually getting more return on your capital on a Bitcoin basis increased substantially, right? So as I also said in the presentation, we've been debating a ton about what are the right KPIs in this industry. And I keep coming back to, I think shareholder value in Bitcoin terms is the right KPI in this industry. It's an extremely hard KPI to beat, but it should be, right? Alpha is hard to come around, right? Beta, which is what a lot of the current companies offer, it's hard, but it's leverage, right? Generating alpha, that's true incremental gain that you're having over an asset. And that's really where I think we as a management team could be adding value to our shareholders.
Okay, now let's count the rest of the bodies. Satsuma Technology, UK-based, London Stock Exchange listed, raised, I need you to hear this number, $218 million less than a year ago to buy Bitcoin, accumulated 668 BTC, and last week shareholders voted to liquidate, basically at the bottom of the market. Hilarious. Delist, pack it up, done. And look, Mark is genuinely a friend of the program, wish him well personally, but capitalism doesn't care about personal relationships or whatever face they put on these things. Capitalism is the operating system, and the operating system is rejecting the inputs. Now, some of you know HODL Magoo. Magoo has been screaming about the broken incentive structure of Bitcoin treasury companies for years, at least 2 years, while everyone called him a hater, a fudster, a miserable wet blanket at the party. Well, I assure you, Magoo is not a hater. Magoo very well may be an autistic prophet. Which brings us to Nakamoto Incorporated, David Bailey's company, NASDAQ, NACA. Currently, people feel like it should be nada. They just finished shutting down their legacy healthcare clinic operations because apparently that would divert attention away from the Bitcoin newsletter or something. Magoo has been boning them from all sides from the get-go, and he was right again. This one genuinely stepped me mid-coffee. Adam Back, Blockstream founder, cypherpunk legend, hashcash inventor. His BSTR company was going to be the Berkshire Hathaway of Bitcoin. 50,000 BTC target, massive vision. Well, the SPAC is dead. Terminated SEC filings confirm it like 2 days ago. I'm not dunking on Adam Beck. I'm just saying when your SPAC dies before you acquire a single Satoshi, the design may have been flawed. For deeper analysis on this specifically, you may want to head over to Matt Cratter at Bitcoin University, friend of the program. He's done a pretty extensive deep dive on this one in particular. But continuing, these companies had one thing in common. They raised money from other people to buy Bitcoin without a clear plan for how to generate real Bitcoin-denominated cash flow. And when the market got skeptical, the whole thing reversed faster than they can say, preferred convertible note. Speaking of designs that don't fail, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. If your Bitcoin is sitting on an exchange, in IBIT, in MicroStrategy, inside some treasury vehicle with 17 layers of financial engineering, I don't care how many Bloomberg interviews the CEO did, that is not your Bitcoin. That is Coinbase's Bitcoin. That is Larry Fink's Bitcoin. That may be the United States's. The Bitcoin way was built to solve this exact problem. Ironclad self-custody, proper hardware setup, your own node, full on-chain verification, privacy phones, Plan B residency for the people who are completely serious about sovereignty. These treasury companies are failing because they reintroduced third-party trust into a trustless system. The Bitcoin way does the opposite. It removes the counterparty and it makes you the bank. Book your free 30-minute consultation today. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the show notes and become a sovereign individual today. Back to it. Okay, this is the meat. This is the thesis that ties everything together. Parker Lewis. If you don't know who Parker Lewis is, Unchained Capital, Gradually Then Suddenly. Stop this video right now. Go read his work and come back. I'll wait. I'll be here.
Yeah, I don't think retail's gone forever. But on the treasury company stuff, you've been fighting a lot online. I've loved to see it, to be honest. Do you think the treasury companies have been a net good for Bitcoin?
Danny, everything's good for Bitcoin. Okay?
Is it though?
Like in the sense that I think that Bitcoin has to humble everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that people come to understand Bitcoin in a myriad of different ways. A lot of people have to touch the hot stove. Bitcoin treasury companies are not, in general, the equivalent of alt season and altcoins. But there's a very similar lesson that I think is going to have to be learned, which is that it's a great way to get less Bitcoin.
Back! Good! Parker has been making one argument for years that the Bitcoin Treasury hype machine absolutely did not want to hear. Bitcoin Treasury companies are built on a broken incentive structure. Here's the logic. These companies steer investors toward preferred equity instruments, fixed dollar return financial products, instead of actual Bitcoin. Which sounds fine until you remember why you're in Bitcoin in the first place. I'm going to let Parker say it in his own words because he obviously does it better than me. Here we go.
There was a post from a guy who I know and like from Strive talking about how digital credit is the most important inflection point in Bitcoin. And that I looked at and I said, so you're telling me that, in my own view, estimation, no more than 1% of people understand Bitcoin. But the thing that's going to make sense to them is a perpetual preferred equity that is, quote, backed by Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't have any yield, but you're going to pay 13% to them. And that's going to be this transformational thing for Bitcoin. And what he said in this post or this video was that, Bitcoin's too volatile for 99% of people. And again, that's where I started to observe this and say, okay, now you're actually saying things that confuse people about the nature of Bitcoin when Bitcoin is already hard to understand. Is this a net benefit? What is going on? And when I started to call out what I perceived to be misleading marketing around these products, people doubled down. And then when I dug into it, I started to see what, in my view, is a really broken incentive structure, which not only are they complex, financial structures, but at a higher level, their whole strategy is to get people to not buy Bitcoin, but to buy their stock instead.
Yeah.
And then, and for one end of the bookend, which is the people investing in the common equity with the idea of getting more Bitcoin, and I have, logical reasons to describe why you won't get more Bitcoin that way. The companies will, but you as an individual, if you were saving in Bitcoin, you'd be better off just saving in Bitcoin. And then on the other bookend are the people that they're shepherding or trying to shepherd into these preferred equity instruments that are fixed dollar equity instruments that are ultimately going to be left holding the bag as fiat loses its value and eventually hyperinflates. That the last person to hold those is the one holding the bag. And that those people would be better off just buying a smaller amount of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is too volatile to you, you are the volatility. The market is the volatility. People pricing Bitcoin for the first time are the volatility, and Bitcoin doesn't have a yield. So the better thing for those people would be simply buying a smaller percentage of Bitcoin and then learning and, reading a book, rabbit holing, spending the 100 hours to, understand how to keep your money. But there's actually a disincentive, and that the disincentive also extends to the shareholders, that people who have bought the stocks have a direct incentive to get people not to buy Bitcoin, but to buy their stocks. And I'm not saying that everybody operates or effectuates that incentive, but the incentive exists. Because the same incentive does not exist with the ETF, because the ETF is managed to net asset value. So you could hold 90% Bitcoin in cold storage, but you decide to buy the Bitcoin treasury stock. You suddenly need people to buy your stock and not Bitcoin to validate your thesis around that 10%, which is meaningful, right? Because if all else is equal to you, and it's like, oh, well, you could either go buy Bitcoin at company X, Y, or Z, or buy the ETF. You are incentivized to get them to also buy your stock. And that's where I see the greatest misalignment, because it's predicated on, constantly raising more and more capital, and most of which should be people just buying Bitcoin directly.
And OnRamp just published a full report backing this up. Spot Bitcoin holdings offer stronger long-term value than any form of paper Bitcoin exposure, because fixed supply means fixed supply, not 21 million plus equity instruments plus preferred shares plus convertible notes plus SPACs plus merger dilution. 21 million, full stop. And it's actually like 16 million when you account for lost coins. So yeah, number go up. And the market is figuring this out in real time. The companies that layered financial engineering between you and the Bitcoin, they're getting filtered. And that is not bearish for Bitcoin. That is Bitcoin working exactly as designed. That wasn't Bitcoin failing. That was leverage failing. That was financial engineering failing. Bitcoin didn't move. Bitcoin has been orange pilling the market slowly, relentlessly, the way it always has. The weak structures exit, but the corn remains. Now, speaking of ways to access liquidity without selling your Bitcoin and without becoming the next Satsuma Naka. Now, I was, is, and remain skeptical of Bitcoin-backed loans. The first thing that comes to mind is rocket ship, get on board, my BlockFi bros. But Ledn isn't like those shitcoin loan platforms of yester cycle. 8 years, 10 billion in loans issued with a B, like B for boy, 0 customer Bitcoin lost and 0 lent out, 0 rehypothecated. You can set up auto top-up protection so you never get liquidated. Lowest rates in the market, no fine print. I personally have 2 friends who have used Ledn just this past year to make down payments on homes without selling a single sat or creating a taxable event, just using a small portion of their personal stack. That's pretty awesome. Keep your stack, get cash, repay whenever you want, no penalties. That's the opposite of these treasury structures that blow up the moment the market sneezes. Scan the QR code or click the link in the show notes, head to ledn.io today. Back to it. Now, we need to address the massive 843,000 Bitcoin elephant in the room. Michael Saylor, strategy MSTR, because Michael Saylor is not on the body count list, and that distinction matters enormously. Here's what happened. Strategy sold 263.5 million in MicroStrategy shares last week, 0 Bitcoin added. Cash reserve now sits at a record 3.225 billion. The Bitcoin stack? Untouched. Is that a crack in the wall? Is Saylor getting soft? Is this the moment we've been warned about? I'm going to be honest with you. No. And here's why. Saylor is not Satsuma. He's not BSTR. He's not Nakamoto Incorporated pivoting away from hospital beds to newsletter subscriptions. Strategy has been running this exact playbook for 5 years. They have institutional convertible note infrastructure, a battle-tested balance sheet that survived the 2022 bear market and came out on the other side. The man is not retreating. He's reloading. There's a difference. MicroStrategy is not like the rest. MSTR, and I will say this clearly, is the private sector's national strategic Bitcoin reserve. The structure is completely different. The track record is completely different. The scale, very important, is completely different. Their connections and protections are different. You can debate the financial engineering all day, but when the paper companies are liquidating and strategy is sitting on nearly 1 million Bitcoin and 3 billion in dry powder, the comparison makes itself. So let me bring it home. Bitcoin treasury companies are failing. Paper Bitcoin Twitter wants you to believe this is bad for Bitcoin, and I'm here with the data, receipts, Parker Lewis, full body count to tell you the narrative is wrong. Here's what's actually happening. The fiat system, the Ponzi that's been running since Tricky Dick, the infinite money glitch, the fractional reserve free-for-all, it does one thing when it touches something real. It wraps it in paper, it securitizes it, it turns it into preferred shares, convertible notes, SPACs, and ticker symbols. Pretty sure there was something about this in some files. But, it takes the hard thing and manufactures a soft version. And then it charges you a fee for the privilege. It's called rent-seeking behavior. Anyway, Bitcoin doesn't negotiate with financial terrorists with that process. Bitcoin rejects every wrapper, every layer, every instrument that tries to substitute it for the real thing. The market is not rejecting Bitcoin. The market is filtering out the paper and keeping the Bitcoin. Spot Bitcoin wins. Self-custody wins. The ETFs are buying, Wall Street is buying, nation states are buying. And meanwhile, the paper structures, the ones built on other people's money and the trust me bro incentives, they're burning. And some would consider that a thing of beauty. This is not a crash. This is a transfer. The massacre isn't bearish. The massacre is the bull case. The flawed structures are leaving. What's left is the real thing. And that's the kind of thing you want to protect and secure. When you set up your Bitcoin wallet, did you actually plan for real life? Because phones get lost. People forget things. Stuff breaks. And eventually, whether you like thinking about it or not, your Bitcoin may need to be passed on to someone else. That's exactly why BitKey makes so much sense. It's like the idiot-proof hardware wallet. BitKey is a self-custody Bitcoin wallet designed around the fact that life happens. There's no seed phrase sitting on a piece of paper that can disappear forever, and there's no single point of failure where one mistake means your Bitcoin is just gone. The new BitKey device even has a touchscreen, so when you're approving something important, you can actually verify what's happening before you approve it. Transactions, recoveries, address changes. You can see it yourself instead of blindly trusting that everything is okay. Recovery and inheritance are built in. Lose your phone, you have a recovery path. Want to make sure your family can access your Bitcoin someday? You can set that up too. No extra subscription, no separate inheritance service, no insanely complicated process that requires a computer science degree and a treasure map. It's just a much more practical way to hold Bitcoin for the long term. Get your BitKey today and use promo code SUNDAY to get 10% off. That's it. Get your BitKey. Do it. Do it today. If you're still holding paper Bitcoin, preferred equity, and some SPAC promising to go 50,000 Bitcoin strong, I'm asking you, with full love and full respect, to reconsider your life choices before the market does it for you. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin, full stop. Stay humble, stack sats, don't sell your Bitcoin, smash that like, hit subscribe, give us a pamp, and let us know down below. Love you guys. Catch you next time. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship, you.